All right, first and foremost, give all praise, honor, and glory to the Most High God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and his son, the Mashiach, who some call Yahweh Yeshua, Yehoshua. We mostly know as Jesus Christ. Short clip here. Well, not a short clip, but we gonna clip a little bit of this dialogue that Vocab has. Shouts out to Vocab. That Vocab Malone had about Christian nationalism. Bringing some of this stuff to light. A lot of us, a lot of Israel kind of knows what's going on in a lot of the places, the dialogue outside of the workplace, the dialogue that a lot of the little hats, a lot of white people have away from other minorities and how they feel, and people have a preference. Let me start with that. And it's okay for me, honestly. It's okay to it's okay to me for someone who's white to only want their children to marry white people, and who's black to want their child to only marry black. Or if a black man says, I only want to date black women, or a white man says, or Asian man and Arab man, and they want to preserve their culture, preserve their race. That's not a big deal to me. I think we culturally are different. Yes, we're all humans, and we can come under one umbrella, and maybe that doesn't work as well when we're under one umbrella and we have one mission. Yeah, we can come together and have the melting pot. But the melting pot kind of hasn't worked here. Everybody kind of has their own little culture. Everything ain't melted in together. There's a in major cities, there's an Asian sector, or a China sector. There's a Mexican, a Latino sector. Some major cities, there's a Cuban sector, a Dominican sector. There's a black sector. Usually, you're in a black sector when you got an MLK, okay, Malcolm X Boulevard, Martin Luther King apartments, Carver Heights. We have communities named after some of our civil rights leaders. There isn't, and then you have little hat communities, where they all together. They got their own police, they got their own hospitals. They're preserving themselves for them. They did that for them. And it's really, that's one of my issues with this thing, is we the only ones not trying to do that. We the only ones not trying to have our own hospital. And even some of these churches, like St. Jude's, even though St. Jude's let everybody, come there and benefit from that. But, we have a hospital out here called St. Francis. A lot of this stuff coming from Catholicism, and it's under that umbrella, providing these services for us. Then we talking crazy, So, this video is interesting because it kind of sheds light on how other folks are thinking. Again, I don't have a lot of issue with whether, you can do what you do, if you want to go out here and do that and marry somebody outside, you can do that. These two brothers are married outside of their race. You in America, that you could just legally, you can legally do that. But the text speaks against that. The text does speak against that, for Israel. But, then too, we always mix. We constantly mix. Is developed, from a mixture. But let me go and let this thing play.
Brief clips where he kind of defines Christian nationalism. Because if you're like,
Christian nationalism.
I still don't fully understand what this is.
And I'm gonna tell you what it is. It's a evolving, like for me, the KKK has evolved. They're not as radical, and the society hasn't allowed them to be as radical, and so they're moving more wisely. They don't have to burn crosses in front of your neighborhoods. They can they can get in political offices and tear down your neighborhood and have a construction company to make all the money rebuilding your neighborhood. And then put a few of y'all in there back in the neighborhood. And once they done tore it down, put a trickle of you back into the neighborhood to make it seem like, hey, well, listen, we made it clean for you. And at the same time, we got to take accountability because we allowed the neighborhood to get to a certain point where they can come in and do that. Where the neighborhood is being destructed. I mean, yeah, being destroyed. And the value is going down. Some of the prejudice, like I get it on both sides. Like, yeah, some of the prejudice do fit. Yeah, sometimes we come into a neighborhood, if you put a lot of Section 8 houses in a neighborhood, and that's really not dealing with skin tone, that's kind of dealing with people that are impoverished. All right. It could bring down the neighborhood. And, the way this system is, the way this thing is it operates, blacks do, minorities do, moving into certain neighborhoods bring down their value. That may not, you have to do the statistics on it. I don't know the exact statistics, but it's probably some truth to it. Y'all hit the comments if y'all know the statistics. Hit the comments on that. But we got to take some accountability, and we have to start having communities that we don't want to leave. We got to start building communities. We got to start building organizations. We got to start building certain things that we don't want to leave. That we see the value in it. And we see the value in it, and so we pour more into it, and we try to expand it. We don't have that. They tried to do that at Stonecrest. They called it, look, they kind of had a new, what they called it, New Black Wall Street. Trash. They tried it with that brother. What that brother name took all them black folks' money. They invested millions of dollars into this joker to start some kind of fund to get all of these houses, and this joker lost every penny. Dr. Umar Johnson giving this joker money for 15 years. And he trying to do something by himself without God. Trying to do something, trying to ask his quote unquote ancestors. And your ancestors didn't do it. How you think there's a Tuskegee? How you think you have HBCUs? Where you think that money came from? And we got to wake up, man. And stop living in fairy tale land. And that's what I'm seeing with these brothers living in fairy tale land. Oh, we just all together, and we the church, and the church is the most segregated place ever. On Sunday, there's nothing more segregated than the church. So, and listen, I'm not, they can't, if you walk into a church, it's all white people. If they kick you out of there, then, you can say something. I don't think they would. Some would. Maybe some, a few that would. And look at you in a way like, what in the world? But I don't think a lot of churches would kick you out. They'll deal with you for a little second. and see what you know, and hey, what you doing? Where you from? Where you coming from? Where you had you been? Where you, well, you know, and try to get as much intel on you as they can, but they probably don't want you there. And you're not gonna see that on the opposite end. You're not gonna see white people just stumble into a black church and like, well, wait a minute, this all black people church, and they just gonna sit down in there just accidentally, and they, you know, you know, just ain't gonna see it, man. We just culturally different. We are different, and there's nothing wrong with having, you know, having certain preferences. But to me, these brothers, they look at their face. You know, they've been living in fairy tale land.
Where he gives two. Now, there's a lot more. We could do multiple shows on this, and so could they. But here's where he briefly defines it in two different short clips about what Christian nationalism is from their perspective.
Mill guys, but then there's these classic two kingdom, all mill guys, and then there's Baptist, and then there's Paedos, Presbyterian, Paedo Baptist, and so but what would they share in common? What's the lowest common denominator? And I came up with three ideas. So one would be a belief that we are called to work towards distinctly explicit Christian nations, and that it could happen. So within the realm of eschatology, whether simply saying that providentially mill guys, but then there's these classic two.
Hey, vocab, I can't hear you.
Sorry about that. He's saying it's a large coalition of different types of people. And that's interesting because it used to be basically primarily you would have Presbyterians who were post-mill, but now you have guys like Apologia and them who are Reformed Baptists and yet post-mill, but haven't adopted all the elements of Presbyterianism. And so he's talking about a broad coalition. So it's not exactly theonomy. Now that relates to post-mill, but doesn't have to go together. You can be post-mill without being a theonomist. And these days you can be a theonomist without being post-mill, or you can be either one of those without being Presbyterian, apparently. Now I think it's all inconsistent because it shows problems with your understanding of the covenant. But let me show one other times where he defines it briefly in case that one wasn't clear.
Of a somewhat normal life like I did, and so I think that's one of them is it's the one common denominator is not that you must be post-mill or all-mill or pre-mill. I think you could be in any of those three positions, but you're believing that that Jesus could tarry, that Christians should be involved in the political affairs of a nation, working towards the politics being Christianized, and that you.
What does he mean? The politics being Christianized. And listen, he's saying, hey, Christ could tarry. He may not be here. This may not be the end times. We need to make sure we in these politics. We need to make sure that we in these affairs to make sure that we can keep control.
You could be successful in that it's actually worth the effort.
Would you add anything to those definitions, Chris, with people trying to understand what Christian nationalism is?
Well, the problem with Christian nationalism, as I see it, is there are 100 Christian nationalists, but there are 110 definitions of Christian nationalism. The problem is it's. But let's go with his, since we're critiquing Webbins. In the first clip, it's kind of weird because he uses the term Christian nationalism in the definition of, he's like, they working towards a Christian nation. It's like, well, okay. So it's as long as you're for the goal of working towards some, and let's be honest, some general vague Christian nation, because that's the problem. Because in their ideology, Christian doesn't actually mean a regenerate person, a convert. Because remember, he's a kind of adopting, in some sense, a Presbyterian view of Christian, right? So you can have your kids be Christian, even though they have not converted yet. Again, I know some Presbyterians might push back on that, but that is a large consensus of Presbyterians who adopt that. So they working towards Christian nation, and they not just working towards it, but you believe it could happen. So you got to be positive about the outcome of Christian nationalism actually taking place. And Jesus could tarry. So pretty much we got time to actually do this. So that's why I think this is largely post-mill. Now, again, I know some people who aren't post-mill who are into these circles, but, kind of the idea of Jesus' return being imminent. It could come at any moment. You got to get that out of Christian nationalism, right? Because we have to build towards a future here on the earth.
They like to quote Doug Wilson on that.
And even if even if like a lot of us are under the fact that it can happen any moment, it can happen while we doing this stream. That sky can crack. You still need to do what you need to be doing. Even if you have that understanding, you still need to be doing what you need to be doing to preserve your family, to preserve whatever you trying to preserve. Or your way of life, or you still need to be doing work towards, or working towards bringing people to righteousness and bringing people to Christ and teaching people to live righteous. And they're trying to say that they found a way to say that, to say, hey, you know what, we're gonna bring people to Christian, or we need to Christianize this nation again. And really, it's not that they're trying to Christianize it. They're trying to ensure that, the powers that be they stay in that power, stay in those communities. They can keep control as long as possible until Christ returns. And a lot of us are under the understanding and have chained ourselves to a sense, just like the video I did prior, under that understanding that, these folks are going to have control until Christ returns, point blank, period. And so we make no efforts into making any control or to gaining any control under this banner, under this system. But I yield with that. We'll shoot back maybe. But y'all go to Vocab channel, you watch. It's a 2-hour dialogue between these two brothers and Vocab talking about Christian nationalism or Christian identity. It's always been here, just taking on a different name, taking on a different look. It's just evolving around the times, navigating through legislation and red tape. But it's the same message. I pray this thing was edifying. Y'all be blessed. We'll see y'all on the next one.